NATO defence ministers are arriving in Brussels at this hour, gearing up to discuss their new mission, Arctic Sentry. The NATO Chief Mark Rutte will be chairing the talks as the alliance puts plans in place to boost its military presence in the far north. The deployment is an effort to smooth over a recent rift between the US and other NATO allies over Donald Trump's plans to annex Greenland. Germany's defence minister has welcomed the mission, saying that Germany will initially contribute 4 Eurofighter jets.
Who is using this route? Who is securing this route for themselves or for others? These questions are of central interest to NATO countries. Since Russia is the strongest maritime force in the region, we need to take a closer look at that. And we have been looking into it for years. That is why I welcome this next step, which is Arctic Sentry.
Now, the US President Donald Trump's focus on Greenland put the Arctic region in sharper focus. NATO Chief Mark Rutte said the alliance's new mission will leverage its capabilities in the face of growing Russian and Chinese interest in the region as it becomes a new geopolitical hotspot.
Here in the Arctic, everything is changing. The ice is melting and the region is becoming a new geopolitical hotspot. The US does not want to leave the strategic area to Russia or China. Under pressure from Washington, NATO is responding to those concerns.
Arctic Sentry leverages the strengths of the alliance by bringing together NATO and allied activities in the High North into one overarching operational approach to the region.
With its new Arctic Sentry mission, the alliance will reinforce its presence in the High North and increase cooperation in an area it is generally acknowledged has not gotten enough attention from NATO until now.
It will be about patrolling with ships, with drones, with planes. It will not so much be about stationing troops permanently, for example, in Greenland.
It is, however, partly President Trump's focus on Greenland that compelled NATO to launch its enhanced vigilance activity in the Arctic. While the most publicly available threat assessments do not indicate an immediate danger from either Russia or China, experts say the potential is there.
There are still important gaps, especially when it comes to undersea situational awareness, also in the North American Arctic, which is much colder and harder to navigate. So we're actually seeing less activity there at this time, but that could, of course, change in the future. I think this mission really has the potential to further bolster NATO's surveillance and situational awareness capability.
NATO Chief Mark Rutte says Arctic Sentry is a step-by-step approach.
We bring together what we have, leverage what we have, assess where the gaps are, get Allied Command transformation involved so that the latest technologies will be part of it, and then, based on the assessment of the gaps, decide where we need to do more over time.
Concerns about Russian and Chinese ambition in the Arctic go beyond their current military presence.
Russia is drilling oil, there is gas there's critical raw materials. You see that China would like to have a piece of the cake. There's the navigation route, Northern Sea Route, along the coast of the Russian Arctic that would decrease the shipping time between Asia and Europe considerably.
With Arctic Sentry, NATO aims to create a more cohesive picture of potential challenges in the Arctic and resolve some of those that have arisen inside the alliance itself.
We're going to cross straight to Brussels and get more from DW correspondent Terry Schultz. Terry, NATO defence ministers meeting just ahead of the Munich Security Conference. Tell us what's going to be on their agenda.
That's right, Anya. And as we heard, Arctic Sentry was just announced yesterday. Today, I'm sure defense ministers are going to be discussing what contributions they can make to this new mission. Now, a lot of what Arctic Sentry will do will bring under NATO coordination some of the operations that are already in existence, exercises, perhaps maritime presence, air patrols. But they will also be looking at what security gaps there may be and then adding whatever is needed there. As you mentioned, this wasn't moment entirely driven by the sense that Russia and China are encroaching on NATO territories in the north, but better to be ready than to try to play catch up. The other thing on their table, of course, this being NATO, is defense spending. And it's been 6 months since they all agreed to spend 5% of their GDP on defense. So Secretary General Mark Rutte is going to be tracking how they're going on that path. And finally, of course, Ukraine remains a high agenda topic here at NATO headquarters.
Now, the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth won't be joining. What kind of signal does that send to NATO allies?
That's right, and that comes just after his counterpart, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, skipped his meeting of foreign ministers. So when you ask the defense ministers, or certainly Secretary General Mark Rutte, whether this does send a bad signal to NATO, that the U.S. simply doesn't prioritize the alliance anymore, they'll say no. They have a lot of other things to do. Secretary General Rutte just literally said, well, the U.S. has to look over the whole world. We understand if they can't make it to NATO. At the same time, the last time that U.S. cabinet ministers were skipping NATO meetings was way back in 2003 in the middle of the Iraq War. So this doesn't send a good signal to NATO. At the same time, Hegseth's deputy, Elbridge Colby, who is also a major strategist in the Pentagon, will be here holding bilaterals and passing along the U.S. view of NATO. He's expected to again press them on doing more to strengthen the European pillar in NATO and to continue on with their pledges to spend more on defense.
And Terry, you mentioned Ukraine earlier. It's on the agenda. Ukraine's new defense minister is going to be there. What kind of support do you think he can expect from his NATO counterparts?
That's right. The new defense minister, Fedorov, is here meeting his defense minister counterparts. There was some good news from the European Union yesterday, a 90 billion euro loan backed by the European Commission, financed by joint debt, going to Ukraine, and 60 billion of that can be used on weapons. So that's certainly something that will be discussed around the table today. The UK has just come out and announced a new air defense package for Ukraine. So that's certainly one of Ukraine's top priorities and something that they'll be seeking from other allies as well. A lot of the conversation now on how to get weapons to Ukraine centers on what's called the Pearl program, the Prioritized Ukraine Requirement List. And that is where European countries pay the United States to send the most advanced shelf-ready weapons to Ukraine to get them there faster. So that's sort of a range of discussion that we expect today on Ukraine.
Terry, thank you so much for bringing us up to date there. That's DW correspondent Terry Schultz in Brussels.